Former acting attorney general and senior fellow at the American Cornerstone Institute, Matthew Whitaker. Matt, thanks for coming on. We're going to get to Trump and all his legal issues here coming up. Let's talk RFK real quick while we got you. Does the Trump campaign, do you think Biden, are you taking him serious? Do you think he's going to have an actual impact on the election?
I think the impact is going to be on the Biden side. I remember Kennedy is a iconic name with Democrats, and so certainly a desire to get away from their wacky liberal agenda that they currently are pursuing would probably attract some mainstream Democrats. But, I also think that, this vice presidential pick is going to have a great story to tell in the future when she tells her family, remember that one time I ran for vice president. So I don't think it's going to ultimately impact the outcome, but if it does, it'll take votes away from Joe Biden.
Okay. Yeah, interesting point there. And, Matt, maybe that's also, just to follow up on that, that might be why the Democrats and the Biden administration are completely pretending that he does not exist.
Yes.
They will not even acknowledge him as a potential. And again, that's why RFK became an independent. Yes. All right. So let's go back to former President Trump and that civil fraud trial that he's planning to appeal. How do you think that's going to go for him? Do you think the appellate court who reduced the bond is going to say, okay, this is a ridiculous case and toss it out? Because I know that's what his team thinks.
I think they will say it's a ridiculous case. I think they also had two considerations. Even though they didn't write an opinion when they reduced this amount and gave them another 10 days, I think the two things on their mind were that there's no way that the $450 million judgment is going to stand under the law. It was unrelated and untethered to any actual damage amount. There were no victims, and it was based on loans that were repaid in full with interest. I think the second issue they had was the legitimacy of the New York courts. And quite frankly, international businesses and really all businesses looking at doing business in New York thinking that they can be arbitrary and capricious with anybody doing business and start grabbing assets whenever they want after the Attorney General targets them. So I think there were a couple considerations. I think ultimately this case gets tossed out because it's a ridiculous outcome.
Well, Matt, I think another thing here is the timing of the case. We've had guests on that say, it goes to the appellate court here, defense, the prosecutors, they make their arguments here. That might happen after the election. So if Letitia James's goal is to, impede the campaign of former President Trump, which it looks like she is here, that may not happen now, and it might not happen until after the election. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. Where have the Democrats focused a lot of their effort? It is in places like New York and D.C., solid blue base for them. Both the Attorney General of New York and the Manhattan prosecutor decided to use their power to pursue just absolutely illegal actions against President Trump because they could, and that is an abuse of power. It's an abuse of the legal system. And again, I think ultimately this all gets fixed. But to your point, Bob, it doesn't get fixed before the election, and it ends up being election interference because it paints a narrative that just is inconsistent with actual facts.
But Matt, we have been seeing former President Trump actually getting a boost from a lot of these trials. And, it seems that people are sick of the politicization that they've seen of all of this. Do you think that could actually help the former president, even though these will not be resolved before the election?
Yeah, I think essentially people are seeing this for what it is, which is a completely crazy pursuit of one individual because of their political beliefs. And, Donald Trump, I'm sure, is feeling pretty good today because, his stock went public. He's made about $1.5 billion today alone. And, these legal cases are starting to fall apart against him. And so I think that is what you're going to see as we head into November. But the weaponization continues. And I think the pursuit of Donald Trump to try to do anything but beat him at the ballot box is what the left continues to pursue.